Aloha. So I've thought about recently how many things there are to think about, and couldn't quite come up with an answer for that. For my ego, so the internal mental sounds that I identify with, it's kind of like reading a book or reading a story and being curious about the spaces in between words. So if those spaces weren't there, the words would be unintelligible. If I didn't experience no thought, then my thoughts would be unimaginable, incomprehensible. And that's a really interesting idea to me, this idea of no thoughts, being in a state where you're not thinking about anything. And is there actually a you behind thinking? Or is it just a continuous process that you have very little control over? And I think the practice of not being in control is very very powerful and very useful. But my findings in my research of my life and my spiritual path is that that has to be engaged. Has to be active, has to have this energy in it. Otherwise, the old habit patterns just continue, or we think that we're in some way free, but actually that freedom is just conditional. So there seems to be some sort of a need for some kind of push and entrance, a walking out into conditionality that's not up to you, not under your control, not according to your design. And in that, to release control, to release self-fixation, to release the idea of yourself entirely. And I don't know how accessible that is for everyone, for the people that watch my videos or for the people who live on the street. I think for children it's very accessible. There's not this big complicated idea of themselves or control or narrative or who's in charge. There's a state of wonder and a state of wandering and a state of being that they are profoundly embodying and representing. And I'd say that's from a place of innocence. But I think it's an innocence that is all of our natures. It is simply that some recognize that innocence and that some don't. When I think about all of the wars in or genocide in Pakistan and how people can treat each other, you know, I don't think that people can actually act that way without innocence. It's like innocence acting out appropriately or inappropriately according to the conditions, according to the paradigm. And a lot of people take sides, which a lot of the time makes a lot of sense, more sense than not taking sides. But when it comes down to it, death isn't right or wrong. That's not meant to be a toxic gas for passivity, but rather a nerve toxin for the constant attachment, the constant ignorance, the constant lack of depth of practicality or possibility that this moment and this environment and this experience holds, where so many people get to, the point of ending their own life. And I can see that, I can relate to that sometimes in my own depression and my own feeling of aimlessness, because I've put myself into a position where, I'm basically have no applicable skills or education for most of the world. And, every time that I walk out the door of the temple where I'm staying at, what identity do I really have to carry with me? What in terms of the ego that I present to the world, just in going for a walk, I'll probably go back to the temple. That's what I can say. I have a place to sleep tonight. But even more immediately, there is no tonight. And that can be a place of fear. That could be a really massive source of fear, like there's nowhere to go tonight, there's nowhere to sleep tonight, or there is no tonight, right? And I think that's why a lot of people fall into this state of deep depression that just won't stop, because the reality of the impossibility of anything actually happening is being misconstrued as there being something right or wrong to do. And then that leading to passivity and consumption, which is also just innocence expressing itself. So for me right now, the teaching in that is to step out again and go for a walk and be with nature. And if the quote-unquote nature of your mind seems to be like a flippant or obscure spiritual term, go out into the nature, go and see the trees. So drop everything, but drop everything in a way that's not passive. There's nothing wrong with watching YouTube, and there's nothing wrong with being lazy or overeat. There's nothing wrong with being fat, ultimately. I mean, depends on what you want out of life. The only wrong that I can really see, the only wrong that I really know, has nothing to do with material or social or any other kind of wealth, or things going well for you. The only wrong that I can see in the world is breaking your own heart, betraying yourself. And unless you can find a way to stop betraying yourself, you'll never have your eyes wide open enough to see the nature. Amitofo, ni hao.
Ni hao, how are you?
Very good.
烫啊！
哦，很痛哎，太咬他们。
上来，上来，你要不要拍拍？你老公要走了。好啦，你不要动来动去，不然你会越来越慢呐。
哎呀，
上。
哦。
哇，会很快哎。
So I'm sure you'd rather see the beautiful birds more than me, but that's the trouble in life, Sometimes we have to see ourselves, and we don't get a choice to be in another environment, or to be in the relationship we want to be in, or to have the pleasure, have the special experience that we want to have. So, what do we do in that situation? Well, walk. Walk and appreciate what's in front. What's right here. And when you feel those internal energies starting to bubble, your dissatisfaction or your frustration, or you feel suffering, and you're flustered, you're frustrated about that suffering. Get outside of the fixation on particular thoughts. And like I said, do that in an active way, not distracting yourself, but it's like, there was a movie in the 80s or something called The Blob. And it's this big blob of mucus, basically, that went around absorbing people. And, we find ourselves in that blob sometimes. And instead of letting that blob absorb you, walk out from it. And when you walk out from that blob, when you walk out from your current identity, when you walk out from your room, it's very likely going to be that you feel like you're moving through this mucus. You feel a little bit anxious. You feel a little bit depressed. You don't know where the other side is. You don't know where you're going. But you walk through it. And we can all walk through it. So that's my talk for today. Take care of yourselves, and when your suffering really reaches a fever point, walk out from it. Don't let your suffering define you, and don't let your trying to distract yourself and trying to get away from that suffering lead you into the darkness and the hopelessness of being stuck and trapped in your same old coping mechanisms that don't allow your heart to be open and allow your spirit to be brave. Okay? Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.